Good evening. Welcome to another edition of African Americans Ain't Africans, the Think Show that proves without a shadow of a doubt that the so called African American didn't find their way to America in the trunk of a ship. I'm your host, the Indigenous One. The Chevron Deference. We think this type of information is important because this is the type of information that's not put out. And some of the things that are put out, we need to know them. But since media and social media tries real hard to make sure that no information is passed or no information is given, or that false information is always given. I asked the question sometime, how come the fact checkers never show their face? They just tell you what they want you to believe it is and in what direction you should go. So there could be another double trap or triple trap there. So we try to give on and pass on information that if it's not useful to you, maybe it'll be useful to your children, grandchildren, or whatnot, because things are changing rapidly. Now, you see all the migrants invading America now. It's not even what you're being told. It's way worse than what you're being told. But just imagine how your ancestors, how they took it when they were being descended on by a whole bunch of immigrants until they set up their walls and laws to slow the flow down. So we'll be talking about that today, but we're also going to get into the Chevron Deference because that's really important, especially if you don't look at yourself as an African American or Black, because you have all these corporations, all these agencies, all these institutions setting up laws, and they have no jurisdiction to set up anything. But you fall up under their law when you go through their gates or you want to go support their business. There's laws that they can impose on you, and you're trapped in it because you decide to join them. It's kind of like education now. See, many Negroes go with the education now because there's really nothing they can do about it. They can't sue anybody for a horrible education because they bang down the doors to go. And so when they start getting older and they start finding out the meaning of these words, then they feel kind of bad and they don't want to pass the information on to the children because they've made asses of themselves living the lie. An example of that would be in this real simple here at African Americans Ain't Africans, we don't put out stuff that this is just what people think about on a daily basis. But people who look at themselves as nothing, Black, if you look at yourself as Black, you look at yourself as redacted. You're not there. Understand what these words and terms mean. You got to understand what they mean. Somebody can not just tell you a word and you fetch like a dog. And that all plays into what we know. So when you have, I have a lot of people who are so-called educated, try to debunk, what's being said or what we're saying because the schools have taught them otherwise. So when all these people with degrees come, I ask, well, what's a degree? They don't know. And they can have 5, 6, 7 of them. They don't know. Then when you break it down to them of what it is, they really feel stupid because they never took the time to find out. A degree simply means you have no knowledge. And that's what I mean about how African Americans, Black people, they don't read. They just do. Yes, Mr. Johnson. I'm trying to educate all the children every day. Thank you, sir. When you don't know what these words and these terms mean, you're vulnerable to them. All you got to do is ask yourself, what does gree mean? Gree, like agree. Grease simply means superiority, intelligent. That's what gree means. The word gree means. That's why they call those people over there Greeks. But when you put the prefix D in front of it, it means no. This is what I mean when I say we got to know how to read. Just because you can recognize the letters and the characters doesn't mean you can read. What are the symbols? They changed the language so much. If you go back 200 years ago and try to read a book, you can't read it because the way they spoke and wrote and drew was foreign to you. You do it, you write it how it sounds. They come up with all kind of stuff to confuse you. And many of us fall victim to it, and arrogant that we're a victim of it. So understand these terms, understand these words and terms that are used, or you won't fall suspect to them. So we're going to go over a few of them tonight, a couple of them tonight, so you'll know. So like Charles Johnson says, when you know better, you'll do better. Joining me tonight is Infused Virgo to bring up this subject, and she's just coming into the call. So Infused Virgo, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. I apologize for being late. But I'm here and I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, it's
How are
only
you?
3 minutes.
Well, hey, I literally did 50 coming through at Oshkosh. I'm surprised I didn't get stopped because I was trying to get here. So
But it's okay. So while you're taking a breath, we're gonna go ahead and play this video that we have up now.
okay.
This guy is a cat named Charleston White. And I think what's important about him is if you look at his growth, if you listen to his story and see where he comes from and where he is now, you have to be impressed. We can all change. Didn't we just go into fall yesterday? Seasons change. Reminding us change is always at hand. You can always change and be a better person, another person. And this guy right here, he kind of proves it. Kind of intelligent brother. So I'm gonna play this piece that Nicole sent me, and we're gonna talk about it on the other side. Check it out.
Pull your minds out of the presidential election. They told us in elementary school that your presidential vote does not count. The electoral college is the one who elects and selects the president. So you focus on your state senators, your U.S. senators, your city councilmen, your mayor, your government, your school district, your county commissioners, your sheriff. But nigga, don't entertain that president talk. That's a distraction because you don't pick it.
So technically, when we see laws being passed, that's what we should focus on versus who is running the country.
Laws and legislation, because your president does not represent you. Remember, what is his position? Anybody remember
He's the
what?
executive.
He's the commander-in-chief
Yeah.
of the military,
Correct.
not the people. Your state representative is your representation. Your House of Representatives, state senator, House of Representatives, that's your president.
So to not even know who your state representative is, the state senator, and you're looking at a presidential, that's almost foolhardy to say, I don't even know who's even running my goddamn district state.
Who's your constable?
There you go.
Who's your county commissioner? Who's your alderman?
Yeah.
Who's your secretary of state for the state? Who's your attorney general for the state? Come on now. So to look past all of that to be focused on the presidential election, you lost in politics. People, pull your minds out of the presidential election. They told us in elementary school that your presidential vote does not count. The electoral college is the one who elects and selects the president. So you focus on your state senators, your U.S. senators, your city councilmen, your mayor, your government, your school district, your county commissioners, your sheriff. But nigga, don't entertain that president talk. That's a distraction because you don't pick it.
So technically, when we see laws being passed, that's what we should focus on versus who is running the country.
Laws and legislation, because your president does not represent you. Remember, what is his position? Anybody remember
He's the
what?
executive.
He's the commander-in-chief of the military,
Correct.
not the people. Your state representative is your representation. Your House of Representatives, state senator, House of Representatives, that's your president.
So to not even know who your state representative is, the state senator, and you're looking at a presidential, that's almost foolhardy to say, I don't even know who's even running my goddamn district state.
Who's your constable?
There you go.
Who's your county commissioner? Who's your alderman?
Yeah.
Who's your secretary of state for the state? Who's your attorney general for the state? Come on now. So to look past all of that to be focused on the presidential election, you lost in politics. People.
Well, now, was that worth sharing? Should we have shared that? With all the everything that's going on around us, everything that we think we know.
I think that it was important. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, apologize.
No, should we know that? Should we know the things that he said? Who's the attorney general of your state? And you can tell, you can see now with attorney general, wasn't a Kamala Harris the attorney general for California? So when you ask people from California about, they don't know. These are 50, 60, 70-year-old people. They don't know. They're not taught that. They don't teach their children that. They just teach when she's in a position to put her in that position, you'll put her in that position because you don't know. Don't want to know. Arrogant when it's given to you. That's why we're kind of, doing this really late tonight because, the people who don't listen, they're out doing other things. So, Infused Virgo, what are your thoughts about what the brother was saying?
Well, I'm going to say that I am very happy that someone could come and put it so simply so that way it could be understood by everybody. But the one thing that I want to mention is that according to some past rules and regulations and so forth, each state at one time was considered its own country. So like, for example, I'm from Wisconsin. So I would be a Wisconsinite. And with that being said, each state had its own government. Your Secretary of State is basically like the president of your state. So when he's talking about knowing who your representatives are for your state, it's very important that you know who they are, because that way you know who to go to in regards to issues within your state or outside of your state. Like, for example, if there's a bill that is going to be passed federally and you stand behind that bill, you get behind your state representative your senator, your governor, and so forth, and you say, hey, we're interested in this particular bill, this needs to be passed. And instead of worrying about who's going to be running the White House, which is not even in our jurisdiction, you worry about what's in your jurisdiction. And I think the way that he broke that down says basically that very simply, so that way, like I said, it can be comprehended by all.
Yeah, so we just wanted to bring that up, about knowing how these politics work. And you probably hear it a lot of times when people say support your local government, things that you can reach out to, you can walk to, that you can catch the bus to, these things that are right at your fingertips. Because, like he said, the president is the commander in chief, doesn't really have anything to do with you. So this is something you might want to teach your children, your grandchildren, so they'll know these things growing up. And the school is not going to teach them. You're going to have to teach them. Those of you that have children and grandchildren. Now, what we came here tonight for is to share this Chevron Deference with you. And this is important to know, because just like that election thing, how we think we're in national politics when we're not even in local politics. These are things that we should know, because these corporations, these organizations be coming up with law to put over you, and they have no legal standing to do that. So these are some of the things that you might know, some of the things your children and grandchildren might know that they have fallen in. So we're going to get into that. So Infused Virgo, take it away.
Okay, so basically what the Chevron Deference is, it was a bill that basically gave all the organizations like the FBI, CIA, the local police department, anything that had to do with state government and federal government, the opportunity to take a law, like for example, that Congress would say we're passing marijuana across the whole entire state or the whole entire country. I'm using this as an example, but it's actually a thing. And so we're taking it off of the Schedule 1 drug list. It's no longer going to have any criminal backing, blah 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 blah. But instead of each state following what Congress said, they said, oh, well, we don't like that idea. We're going to take what you said and we're going to interpret it to benefit us. Well, the Chevron Deference being overturned by the Supreme Court says, no, you can't do that. Not anymore. Nope. We're not allowing you to interpret it to benefit you. Now we're going to have to reestablish this and allow the regulations and the laws to be interpreted so that way they can be unambiguous and everybody can understand them, as well as benefit from the statute or the law. So by overturning it, it takes away basically all their power. So when, for example, the police stop you and they don't read you your Miranda rights, you can say, not a lot of people will do this, but you can, well, you guys didn't read me my Miranda rights. I don't have to give you my ID. I don't have to do anything. And you do have the protection of the Chevron deference behind you, because they have lost their power to interpret the law the way they have been to benefit them, so they can be intimidating. The statutes and everything are supposed to be ambiguous, and as we know, they are all unambiguous. They are all unilateral contracts. They are not for the benefit of the people. By understanding the Chevron deference, you can look at these regulations and laws and turn them back so that way they will benefit you. But you also have to educate yourself about these regulations and laws, because unfortunately, I don't understand it. We've allowed people to come here and say, okay, well, this is your land. Yeah, but we're going to tell you what to do. We're going to tell you how to live. Now we have an opportunity to understand what they've done and understand what they cannot do and use it to benefit ourselves. But it's going to take a lot of studying, a lot of reading, and a lot of having an open mind and listening. So that is pretty much how the Chevron deference works. It basically, it takes away their power. Supreme Court overturned it. So if you understand law, which is coming in 2 different languages, you got legalese, you have I can't think of the other thing, you guys, right now. It'll come back to me in a minute. Boy. Well, you have two languages, and you have legal ease, and then you have basically where they can make up laws for themselves or make up a situation for themselves by lying and using the law to do it. So I can't think of the word right now, it's gone, but that's pretty much it. And once you really understand the regulations, like when you're reading them, don't read them and go, oh, okay, I get it. Read them, look up the words so you can understand that the word that you might be looking at, like reasonable, you think that means, okay, that's understandable. No, it has a completely different meaning when it comes to legal terms. So you need to learn the language of the legal side, as well as having the language English that we use, because there's 2, 3, 5, 7 different meanings to each word. So,
and understand what you are to these laws and stuff. Because if you go around calling yourself black or a non-entity like an African American, you can be trapped up and caught in these things, and you're the one asking for them because you're confused about who you are. You have no idea. The whole doctrine may not even be talking about you. But since you're looking at yourself like somebody told you to look at yourself, you fall right into it. Don't they have something when they use a grandfather clause?
yeah.
How come you don't use that? Because you think you from Africa, and people who are from Africa, they don't have the same rights that you do. I mean, that's if you're an indigenous person to America. And when we say indigenous people to America, we mean the people who was born from the land. Your religious, your spiritual ideologies tell you that. So when we talk to Christians and Muslims and all these other people bringing ideologies from other places, we ask them, do they respect the ideologies of the indigenous people here? And they don't. But the indigenous people here respect theirs more than they respect their own. That's how we lose.
True. I mean, one of the representatives we looked at, his family is from Poland. So how many indigenous people from America can go to Poland and get involved in their government and start telling them what they're going to do on their land? That doesn't equate, because we can't go to Singapore and say, oh, well, you know what, you can no longer eat fish, no longer. But we've allowed people to come here and develop a government using the format of the government that we had established already, claim it as theirs, and then turn around and use it against us. That doesn't make any sense, because we wanted inclusion so bad. I guess we forgot that we already had our own government set up. We already had our own councils. We already had our own system set up. And now we've allowed other people to take it from us and turn it around and say, well, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't drink out that water fountain. What? When the water was running in the river when they came here, and you were drinking out of it freely before they even sat here. So how is it that they were able to come here and say, oh, well, we're going to make up all these laws now and you're going to abide by them? Because we don't know the treaties. We don't know politics, and politics is based off of lies. We don't understand how the acts work. We don't understand the USC codes. We don't read, and we should read. If you go on to congress.gov and you could look up anything and say, what does Congress think about fresh water? There's going to be a House ruling on fresh water where they have either put forth the bill or they've introduced a bill that says that federally they can't, that this is going to be the rules. However, because they put that bill in there and says failure is going to be the rules. And then we're supposed to go on there and we're supposed to read it. And then we're supposed to contact our state representative or our senator and say, hey, I don't agree with that, or I agree with that, or you're not including us, or whatever. But we don't partake in that part of it. And that's why things get passed and executive orders get passed and all these things get passed. And then we're left in the wind going, what the hell is going on? Because we're not partaking in the government that's running our land when we should be at the forefront of all of this, because it's our home. This is our land. We put it in someone else's hand and said, okay, well, you go ahead. We'll just accept whatever you hand us. No. And in regards to the making up of laws, as I'm reading from the comments, there's something called the Administrative Procedure Act. And this was enacted in 1946, but in regards to rulemaking. And when they come up with something that they're going to like put into play, they're supposed to release it to the public, which they do because it's on congress.gov. You're supposed to read it and say, I don't like this, or I don't agree with this, or this is not doing anything for my neighborhood, or this is not doing anything for my children in school. But we're not participating in this. We're letting other people participate and represent us who don't even belong to our culture, who don't even belong to this land. You know, they're telling us, oh, well, you were a slave, knowing damn well that you weren't. But a lot of African Americans are accepting that they came from slavery when they didn't. So going back to the Administrative Procedure Act, when you are not participating in the things or representing, or we don't have a indigenous representative in the judicial system right now. And so how can we get justice when we don't actually have someone like ourselves who's in there, or a group of people, or a council who represents us, or anything? We have nothing. Asian people have representatives. The Hindustani people have representatives. Ukrainian people have representatives. People from Senegal have a representative. Ethiopians have representatives. Mexicans have representatives. Everybody else, every other culture that lives here has a representative that is speaking for their community with this government, but us.
You don't have no representatives in there? Because we always happy to see a black face in it, and they say those are representatives. What constitutes a representative?
A representative is someone who has a like mind with the collective that they come from. For example, do you guys agree with Kamala Harris? I mean, do you identify with her? Do you see her as being an indigenous woman? Well, she's claiming she's black, but do you see that? Where is the person who says, hey, I'm indigenous, I'm from America, this is where I'm from? Like Frederick Douglass said, my sinews are from here. My people are from here. I was born here. I was born over there around the hill in that house over there. And on the land that I was born on, we grew corn. We don't have anyone who says that. Yeah, you might have some so-called African American representatives, but if you're not identifying as African American, where's our voice? Where is it? Who's representing the indigenous American who feels the way that we feel? We don't have that. We have people who are speaking for a community that doesn't exist because African Americans are not real.
I'm with Charles Johnson on this one.
Okay.
I don't expect justice from a system built on injustice by demons.
That's true.
Because they have all these corporations, all these organizations, all these things that they can make law. They're never right. That's why it's over 2 million laws on the books.
Mm-hmm.
What? Huh? Everything is so where you can't understand it, confusing. It's not just straight out, because when you give people straight out information, they go crazy. They get mad.
True. And I feel, and I understand, and I can get what both of you are saying, but we have an enemy who has infiltrated our whole structure, and they have put forth these so-called laws, and we have no comprehension of what half of them mean because they talk in circles. And they do that so that way you won't try to figure it out and you won't want to know what the hell they're talking about. That you'll just look at that piece of paper or a contract or whatever they said and go, okay. Because of the fact is that, like I said, they have legalese, which is the legal language that they use in this area of law, which has been passed down from Greece, Rome, and their societal structures. And they bought it over here and they implemented it here. And while they were implementing it here, they were telling us what we wanted to hear so they could take the land from underneath their feet, supposedly, and not respect the so-called treaties and all of the things that they did. But because we don't understand the language that is involved with these so-called laws, regulations, and statutes that they've created, we get played like a yo-yo. They want, for example, they want the so-called black vote. But then when they're making these speeches talking about what they're going to do, they don't say, we're going to do this for the so-called black community. And I know black doesn't exist, but I'm using it as an example. They say, okay, well, we're going to do this for minorities. Minorities doesn't mean indigenous. It don't mean black. It don't mean African American. It means woman. It means gay man. It means Hindustani person. It means immigrant. It means Chinese person in Chinatown. Those are who they consider minorities. They're not talking about us. They're not talking about African Americans. They're not talking about blacks. They're excluding you in your face. And because we don't understand what the word minority really means when it pertains to that type of speech, we're, oh yeah, they're gonna put money in our schools. No, they're not. They're gonna put money in Chinese people's schools. They're gonna put money in Asian, well, Asian and Chinese, same thing. But Mexican schools are going to go build up the neighborhood where they have the Hispanic grocery stores. They're going to give them grants. They're going to do all, but they're not doing that for us. Because we don't understand the game that they are playing. We are not a major player in this game, but we're the ones who are always getting played. So no, you can't expect justice because justice comes from the word justia, and that does not mean, once again, what you think it does. You can't expect justice from a system built on injustice because you don't understand the words that are being used. Because like I said, there's two languages. There's legalese, and then they create things off of something called legal fiction, which is the ability to lie under law. And so you're sitting there thinking that the word red means the color red or an apple is red, when the word red means that it's in the negative. You're thinking that when they say that they're reviewing something, that they're reading it and they're just looking at it and going to put it to the side, when they're taking that apart and dissecting it to understand what it means so they can interpret it to benefit themselves. You have to learn the language in order to be able to conquer your enemy. And unfortunately, we've been put in that position, whether we expect justice from the system or not. If we don't learn what's going on and what they're doing through their legal language, we're going to continue going down this cycle and perpetuate down to basically being laughed at like we are.
So. Well, I think it's going to be a little bit worse than that because, I mean, let's just go back a few years to where we are now, and you can kind of see where this is going. So you remember a Supreme Court Justice, Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall, he is best known for the Brown versus the Board of Education. Everybody remembers that. Brown versus the Board of Education. And this is why you got to understand what's happening to you, because you may not get the brunt of it, but your children will. Thurgood Marshall came up with the Brown Board of Education so you can go to school and get an education like the rest of them. The Brown versus Education was what, 1950?
Let's see. Hold on.
I forget the year. I think it was 1950, 1955, something like that. Now, 70 years later, those people who were with that, what kind of education are their children getting?
I can answer that.
And I mean, that's you ask the grandmothers, ask the people who children are in school now, what kind of education are you getting? We're going to ask you, infused Virgo, because you have grandchildren and you see this. But what's really important is what Thurgood Marshall grandson is doing now. This is going to trip you out. Thurgood Marshall's grandson is the CEO of the prisons in the United States. So doesn't that, I mean, and look it up, look it up. That gives a whole new meaning to the school to prison pipeline, doesn't it? So, Infused Virgo, can you tell us what's going on in the schools?
Um, yeah. Recently I started a position where I go in after the kids are out of school and I clean. Well, one of the things that's happening in schools is that when the kids walk into school, they hand them this big bag of snacks, and it consists of Mountain Dew, energy drinks, cookies, Takis, chips, um, every junk food, Cheetos, you name it, is in this bag. So they're giving the kids this food, which we have all known that is toxic, it causes ADHD, the high sugar content, everything you name is wrong with this diet. But they're giving this to your kids as they come into school to learn. No child is going to focus wired up. They're not doing any of that. So then they have things in school because they had some free books, and I took one. They're talking about what organ selling organs. What was it? Selling organs ethical? Let's see, I have them right here. They have a book about stem cells. They had a book about child exploitation and human trafficking. They had the Jim Crow dictionary, the age of romanticism. And then all over the school they have the pride flag, and then the Black Lives Matter, and this, that, and the other. So basically they're brainwashing your children, and they're able to do this because of the food that they're giving them as snacks when they come in. They're not giving them anything to help develop their brain. They're giving them things that are going to cause their brain to slow down, and they're not retaining any information. They're basically perpetuating and hypersexualizing your children in school, and then they're promoting the homosexual agenda. So pretty much when your children are in public school, they're done. They're done. There's nothing beneficial about the public school system, and we really need to pull our children out of it. My grandchildren are homeschooled. I took that upon myself, and they're here and they do homeschooling every day. And we do some other activities as well, so I'm involved in their education at this time, because I see it, what's going on in the public schools. But we truly need to pull our children out of the schools. You might not want to teach your kids, you might not have time, but you better make time, because of the fact that they're not learning anything in school but how to be promiscuous, how to be homosexual, and how to eat bad. How, they're learning things that are not appropriate for children to learn at that young of age.
Well, I know this information,
Mhm.
what you're saying, I know is well known
Mhm.
all throughout the nation. Why is everybody just seem to be throwing their hands up like, oh, well, that's how it is?
Do you remember during COVID, and you did a show, and there was a lady who went in the car and she was rolling up a blunt, and she was like, "You need to put these kids back into school. I don't know what I'm gonna do because I don't have no time for myself." And remember, do you remember
Right.
that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the problem right there, because of the fact that it's like I work during the day too, I do stuff, but when I come home, I'm trying to be accessible to them if they need help with something or whatever, because they pretty much have a schedule down where they're pretty independent. But a lot of times, if you're a at home mom, you got time. But a lot of people don't want that that responsibility. So I guess it's easier to send your child to school because then you don't have to worry about it. You can go do what you want. I don't know. I mean, it's like I was a single mom and my kids went to school, and while they were at school, I was working because I had no choice but to do that. And I tried to be somewhat involved. And even with that, I was not fully involved in things because I was busy working to support them. So it's like if you have the opportunity where you're working from home now, or you can work a later shift or whatever, it's best to get your kids involved in homeschooling so you know what's being taught to your kids. And if you don't agree with what's being taught to them, you have a say so, because you can create a curriculum of what you want them to know as well. Because they're going to have to survive in this society, so it's important to know what your enemy is about, but it's also important to know what you're about. And the only way they're going to learn that is if we teach them.
Yeah, but it seems like that way hasn't worked for so long. There isn't any other options that can be done or used, because it seems like what we're doing now and what we've been doing for, it's like no change is being made. It's like if you go up to what's that meeting at the school, PTA meeting,
Mm-hmm.
it's no intelligence coming out of there at all.
Mm-mm.
I mean, with as big as America is, and everybody is falling for the same okey doke. I
Mhm.
mean, homeschooling has been going for a while. So why isn't that more prevalent?
Because the responsibility falls on the parents.
But
On
it doesn't have to be just the parents. It can be, here's an example. Let's say a block.
Mhm.
There are people intelligent. It don't have to be, because you damn sure don't get no intelligence from school.
Right.
I'm sure it's people within every block that the people that live within that block could pick and choose to educate their children. I mean, it's that simple.
You are 100% correct. But there lays the one problem that I'm going to say is that working together factor that seems to be an issue for our collective, because we want to have this I'm the head nigga in charge mentality, or the Oedipus complex, I guess. So I agree with the fact that we could create a community where we're teaching our children together, but we'd have to be able to work with each other. And for some reason, we don't want to do that.
So why do you think that is?
I think a lot of that has to do with the cognitive dissonance and Stockholm syndrome and ignorance, to be honest. Because I'm no better than my neighbor. I'm no better than you or anybody else. But for some odd reason, we seem to be in this mini competition with each other to prove that I know more than you, instead of taking our individual knowledge and combining it together to be able to benefit everyone. And it just doesn't work. And I think that is out of ignorance. I don't know why that is, to be honest. I could say, like I just said, cognitive dissonance, Stockholm syndrome, wanting to be in charge and all the other stuff. But for some reason that seems to have been inbred in us, not to trust or put our faith, I guess, in each other. I don't get it. I don't.
So going back to the Chevron
Hmm.
deference, how does that what does that mean for, let's say, the kids graduating high school today? How does knowing the Chevron deference, how does that help them throughout life? Or how does that help them navigate through life?
I think if they have the type of support that will educate them on something like this, and inform them of the fact that, like, say there's a law that says you can't wear red on Tuesday, that now, hey, you can wear red on Tuesday, because they don't have the authority to tell you that anymore. But you'd have to teach the children that, and this is something that is not being taught to children, or adults for that matter. So the only way that it's going to benefit the future generations is if they're educated about it.
Yeah, but the whole kick on education is we think that it's something that somebody has to give us. I mean, ants educate themselves.
Yeah, they do. And when you read a book, you're educating yourself. So it's on the responsibility of each individual to learn on their own, because of the fact is that this is not something that I was taught. I got into a conversation about this. Somebody brought it up. I looked into it. I started asking more questions about it. In fact, John Blocker actually brought it up to me, and I was like, you know what, that I did hear that. So I started looking into it and reading it and really understanding. And then me and you were talking about it, and we started studying and broke it down, and we realized, wait a minute, Congress just took away all their took the power away. So until Congress says they have power to do that, they technically can do that, which is pretty much what this is. And we started studying it on our own. It takes initiative of the individual to be able to understand something. And then maybe if more individuals start studying it and talking about it, then it can become something that's discussed in the collective. And then if it's discussed in the collective, maybe it's something that we could pass on or create a curriculum to teach the children. Because if we don't teach our children these things, they're going to walk into the world, and we're going to continue having the same cycle we've been having so far. And it's just a whole bunch of dumb on top of dumb and top of ignorant, top of stupid, and we're not getting anywhere. So it's up to us as individuals as well as a collective to learn this information, to comprehend, not understand, comprehend the information, and be able to reiterate it to our younger generations.
Okay, so one more time. The Chevron deference is what now? One more time.
The Chevron Deference it was something that said that each agency could interpret the statutes and laws the way they want to see fit to how it worked for them. Supreme Court overturned that and said, no, you can't do that anymore. We're not leaving this up to interpretation for each organization or each corporation or each sector of the government. Now we're going to look at this, and what Congress says is what you get, and you have to work with it. There's not going to be any unambiguous interpretation. Everybody's going to be able to understand. You're going to have to open up your doors, let everybody see what you're talking about, and make sure that it's understood by everyone. So it's taking away the power for people to take like social services saying, well, you can't get food stamps anymore after 2 days or 2 months. No, that's up for interpretation now, but it's up for your interpretation, because you got to know what the regulations and the laws are to be able to stand up for yourself, because they have literally wrote down and created everything to tell you what they can and cannot do. But because we don't know what those mean and what they say, they're able to do whatever they want. And that's the part of interpretation that they're talking about.
And one of the things where they think they can do anything, and this is something we better understand, is the production of food.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, the earth produces food, men don't. And we shoving down our gullet what people make with all these chemicals. We've accepted. We don't say nothing. We rush in to get it. So what she said about these policies and these laws, these different agencies and organizations are coming up with, you don't vote on them. You have nothing to say about it. You just follow along what they say, even if it kills you. So that's why we wanted to share this with you tonight. It's like, just with everything that's going on and how confusing it is with everybody, it's up to somebody to say something about it so we don't fall victim to this type of nonsense. And here at African American Lane Africans, we're here to make sure that don't happen. We can't be dumb, y'all. I mean, it's past that. So,
Right.
Infused Virgo, any closing thoughts you wanted to bring up?
Yes, I do. Take your time and start looking at the USC codes, because they're like, for example, there are USC codes that will help you with fixing your credit. There's the Truth in Lending Act, which will help you with your car loan or your car contract, because for example, you can't, if you have a car and you're paying for it, you can't get a loan and get a car because they're giving you the car on credit. So they said they were giving you a loan. A loan is giving you money. So you got to start understanding how this wordplay is going on within your contracts, within your daily life. And then another thing is start going on congress.gov and looking up the house resolutions, because like there was one that stuck out to me, which was the HR 1514, which was the relations with the Creek Nation of Oklahoma, saying that until they start incorporating more Creek freedmen, which they want to call anyone who's dark skinned, the Creek freedmen into their organization, that they were not going to honor any of the treaties anymore. But the treaties were with us. So if we're not standing up and saying, well, those treaties were written with my granddaddy, with my great granddaddy, so what are you talking about? And we're not partaking and understanding that these things are out there, we can't have a voice. So you got to really start trying to understand these regulations, statutes, laws, and understand that federal government, Congress, all those rules that they make, they trump anything that has to do with state. So you're going to have to really start understanding these laws that are being made that are affecting our daily lives and are going to affect our children, because no one's speaking up saying that we're not going to tolerate that. They're doing it in everybody else's community. We need to do it in ours. We need to understand the playing field, because everybody else is playing chess and we're just standing there on the board looking stupid. That's all I got, you guys.
Infused Virgo, that was short, that was straight to the point, and I hope it's understandable for everybody, because these are important things that are going on while we're focusing on things that don't matter, on people that don't matter, how all this bullshit is going along, and we seem to be stuck onto it. Find out what's happening in your communities where you grew up, where your mother grew up, where your grandmother grew up, because you are still in those places. Thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight, and we'll see you next time. Before I go, let me say this. The last program we had all kind of technical difficulty, and a lot of the broadcast didn't come through. We're going to redo that one in the near future, because that was some more important information you got to get. Get with some other people who are like-minded like you and start discussing these things, and start discussing them loud so people can see. Because a lot of people, they see something's going on, but they can't quite put their fingers on it. Help them out. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time. You guys have a good night. Peace.
Have a good night.